It is like doctrine. It is like taken on religious faith. You know, it's a totem. It's an icon to dance around, right? And that is completely incongruous with the reality that it is in fact incredibly difficult to get good access to trans healthcare in the UK. So again, just propaganda language right off the bat, but it gets worse.
Just looking at other ways of managing young people's distress during that time when they're working out what the right pathway is for them. And so we
Again, managing young people's distress while they're working out the right pathway for them. This is, again, this was like the big line with the cast review, which was the idea that, like, if you're young and you think you're trans, you're actually not. You have autism, you have ADHD, you have depression, you have anxiety, and like every other pathway has to be considered first, you know? Even though the existing medical research on doctors trying to like detrans a patient by ignoring their claims and just prescribing them other medication, it just doesn't work.
haven't looked at known evidence-based treatments for anxiety and depression, such as
This right here, insane. So here, Hillary Cass is saying, you know what doctors have never thought to do? If somebody claims they're trans, instead mentioning they might be anxious or depressed and prescribing the medication along those lines. What do you think normally has happened to trans people up until the past, like, decade? Like, it's only the past decade or so where there's been widespread standardized medical, practice, you know, like a standard of care for trans people, you know? I would be willing to bet that a significant number of trans people who are older than 25, like trans people who are 30 or 35 or whatever else, that a significant number of them, their early experience with talking to a doctor about them being trans, trying to get on HRT, was the doctor going, are you sure? It sounds to me like you might just be depressed, and being given SSRIs or something. Like, yeah, like Transitoria is saying here, like, for a lot of people, transitioning is not the first option, right? Like, you feel really upset about your body and you feel uncomfortable and depressed and anxious. Not everybody immediately identifies that as, oh, I'm like the transgenders. I'm just like an Overwatch character or whatever. Like, that's not normally like you leap into that, you know? So again, the idea here is like, you know, what if we just try everything else first? Why is she not factoring in comorbidities? Because she hates you. The idea that being trans and not having HRT or hormone blockers to help with the dysphoria might also give you anxiety and depression is so obvious that a child could immediately identify that. Hey, what if a trans patient also has depression, but the depression could be helped with HRT, the thing that's been found to alleviate depression in trans people? But no, obviously not, because again, this is a hit piece. They hate you and they want you to suffer. This is not motivated by any authentic medical curiosity.
As psychological support or even, medications for anxiety and depression that may.
And by the way, I just got to say on this, the research supporting the effectiveness of SSRIs is not good. SSRIs work for some people. They have a known tendency to provoke suicidal thoughts and numb people. They also can cause sexual dysfunction. They can make you gain a bunch of weight. Hillary Cass is basically saying we need to be more frivolous in our prescription of these drugs to youth, to minors, rather than providing HRT. We don't have enough research to indicate the effectiveness of HRT or puberty blockers for trans minors. So instead, let's consider SSRIs, something that's very well researched to be effective for young people. I'm saying sarcastically, SSRIs are gaining an increasingly negative track record, is my understanding. I personally know a ton of, people who were on SSRIs at some point when they were young or like a young adult, and my understanding is that these experiences with them were almost always negative. Now, I'm not saying they're always bad. It kind of varies. It's person to person. But SSRIs don't really have a sterling reputation for effectiveness. HRT does. In terms of regret rates, HRT does have that sterling reputation for effectiveness. Certainly more so than most psychiatric drugs. What's the regret rate for HRT? Like 1 to 2%? Find me any other psychiatric medication Well, HRT isn't psychiatric medication. So any psychiatric medication that has a 2% regret rate. Insane, you know? But this shit right here, you know what they want? You know what they want? You know what Hillary Cass wants, what she's being paid to want? They want more trans youth to be depressive and anxious, to be prescribed drugs that don't help them, and then they kill themselves. And after they do that, all the conservatives in the UK get to point at all these young people who are suffering from gender incongruity, and they get to point at them and go like, oh, look at all the kids who go in for like a gender clinic visit. Look at the suicidality of these kids. This really is a social contagion. That's the point. That's it. It's insane. More people regret having children than there is trans regret. Yeah, by like an order of magnitude.
Maybe just as effective.
God, Hillary looks like shit. Yeah, because she's evil, and evil people look like shit. Sorry, it's true. No, listen, we are in fact believers in essentialism, but only in this one specific way, which is that this is an evil face with evil phrenology. I fully believe this. I think that evil has rotted her. I think she has been paid to be evil, and I think that she has been paid quite well for it, you know?
Just as effective for, or more effective than puberty blockers.
Also, medication for anxiety and depression doesn't treat the same thing that puberty blockers do. Puberty blockers don't treat any psychiatric condition. They pause puberty. That's why they're called puberty blockers. But she's treating it like some kind of psychiatric prescription, like it's a miracle drug being given to kids to like fix an emotional problem. And they're used for cis kids too. Yep, they've been used for cis kids with precocious puberty since the 80s. We have tons of research on how they work. They're not experimental. Puberty blockers aren't experimental. We know how they work. It's insane. Genuinely, it is. UK is a dying country, etc., etc. Oh, sorry. Lest I leave out the broader context here, it seems as though that clip that we just saw was her providing information as a component of her opposing a ban on conversion therapy. The author of the Cass Review has raised concerns about the impact of a conversion therapy bill. Insane? Yeah. This bitch is all over the place genuinely. Well, no, she opposes the ban on conversion therapy. Or wait, does she? Cass said everyone should be protected from conversion therapy. It's a completely unacceptable practice. But she's spoken out against the bill that bans it. I saw it. I remember going over that quote on stream like 3 weeks ago, where she said we mustn't risk criminalizing practitioner. She's so inconsistent. And it's almost like somebody who's been paid to lie, It's difficult to keep all of that, together. Thinking about the legislation, the issue has been about intent. If a therapist engages with a young person, they change their views about their gender identity during the course of that therapeutic relationship, and then they subsequently say it was because the therapist had an intent to change their gender identity, that puts the therapist in a difficult position, because how can you legally determine intent? Is that the language of the bill? How is that the language? Conversion therapy isn't... Okay. Yeah, Nerodia, I think you're correct. I don't think that Cass advocates for conversion therapy. I think what Cass advocates for is delaying the transition of trans people by years and years as extremely scrutinized gender clinicians try every other approach first. Oh, you think you're trans still? Well, you haven't tried a year on this medication. Maybe this could cure it. Maybe this could cure it. So the kind of conversion therapy that Cass wants isn't like, being put in like a facility and having nipple clamps electrocuted, whatever they do in conversion therapy camps. I don't know. But instead to like beleaguer and berate and just draw out the process to make you so tired that you just kill yourself. That's the conversion therapy that Cass wants, for people to give up, for like every other option to be exhausted, for every claim of gender dysphoria to be met with, well, if you tried this thing instead, and then, yeah, like basically to sort of like obfuscate it through bureaucracy to the point where like you're functionally trying to forcibly convert them, just in a more passive aggressive way. I think that's what she seems to want, not the out and about open conversion therapy where they, I don't know, beat you to death with a sledgehammer or whatever else.